begin the day with a conversation that sits at the very heart of enterprise transformation, that's leadership. Today, the world is not merely changing, it's reordering itself. Supply chains are shifting, geopolitical equations are tightening, capital is becoming even more selective, and AI is redefining productivity. In such an environment, the modern CEO must balance speed with structural stability. And scale today is not built only through physical expansion. It is built through technology integration, cultural coherence, and trust capital. Growth must now coexist with sustainability, governance discipline, and stakeholder accountability. Innovation that does not translate into return will not endure. The session will examine how leaders are embedding resilience into their organizations. It will explore how Indian enterprises can be both deeply local and confidently global. And today morning, we are joined by a brilliant panel, outstanding panelist. Please join your hands together and help me welcome Atul Tarmanikar, co-founder and executive chairman, Global Schools Group. May I please request, sir, to join us. Joining us, we have Ankur Periwal, managing director, KPT Piping Systems Private Limited. Let's give a big round of applause. Joining us, Mr. Sanjeev Navangul, MD and CEO, Bharat Serums and Vaccine. Let's join in our hands together to welcome our panelists. Moving on, we have Mr. Shivam Puri, MD and CEO, Cipla Health. Very, very warm welcome to our panelists, requesting Mr. Shivam to please join us. And moderating this very important discussion, this talk, we have Mr. Atul Gupta, partner and head Digital Trust and Cyber, KPMG in India. Very, very warm welcome to our panelists, to our moderator, and are requesting our moderator to take the session forward.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. A very good morning. It's good to see this room full. I was here last evening as well, just before the Prime Minister's session was getting kicked in. And I wasn't aware this is a room where we're showing up today morning, first thing. And good to see people turning over. That too on a day when the love is expressed across the world, right? So it's a great way to start the session. And the topic which we just heard upon is quite unique and very relevant in the context where we are at this point of time. I'm privileged to have this panel. I couldn't have asked for a better start of the day. And I'm sure as we go through the discussions, we're going to get really enriched from the thoughts all our panelists are going to share upon today morning with all of us. But when we get started, just to set a context, and you know this is the GBS 2026 over the last 2 days, which is yesterday and today, has been talking extensively how we are dealing with uncertainties, how we are dealing with continuously challenges and changes, which is imperatives for the CEOs and the chairmen of organizations to operate upon. And the capital markets is just a quick reflection of that. Today morning media or last night closing of the capital market just showcased another volatility going across in the Indian economy. But saying that volatility, when we heard upon last evening the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister who was here, as well as prior to him, we were listening to the Minister who was talking about the trade deals which the country has got itself into now at a political and a geographical level, that's completely transforming the game for country India. In fact, KPMG, we did a CEO outlook study which was published end of quarter or end of 2025, the quarter 4 of 2025. And what it showed, this 83% of the CEOs in India were very positive about the growth momentum that India would see, despite all these imperatives which we are referring upon. Tariffs, geopolitical situations, and so on and so forth. Well, I think it starts off as a great background for us to get going and have a conversation today out over here. And maybe with that backdrop, I'll kick it off and I'll bring upon a perspective from you to start off, saying that how are you seeing at this moment the industry reacting to the dynamism environment which is there, but yet bring stability at the same point of time, because capital markets, regulators, and boards require some kind of a visibility as the shifts are happening. So if you could kick it off.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, inherently there is no conflict as I see in speed and stability. 15, 20 years back, we used to see many organizations which were doing really well, which were able to catch the latest trends and doing fine. And there were these set of organizations which were struggling a bit. And the inherent difference between the two was that one organization was building the ship, keeping their eyes on the future while also ensuring they're maximizing the today. Today, for any organization to survive, you need to actually do both. So what I'm trying to say is that earlier an organization could just focus on today and still survive. Today you need to have an eye on the future. And essentially, I've seen a lot of principles being used by organizations across. I'm lucky to have lots of friends, who are CEOs in various companies. We run it at our end. A couple of things that stand out very cleanly for all the successful ones. One is organizations are starting to keep a clean X% of their complete focus on the future. So what they're saying is, 70 to 80% of my resources, and essentially success of an organization is how you manage resources, right? So they're saying we'll keep 70 to 80% of our resources to manage the current. So we do well today, but very tightly focus the balance 20 to 30% on the future. Because the world will look very different 5 years down the line. I think these are, these sound very obvious today, but 10 years back you could have survived without these principles. Today you need them. I think inherently there's no conflict because you need to keep an eye on the future. And when you're keeping an eye on the future, there are a couple of things that you anyways need to do. You always need to be conscious of what's happening around, so you need to tap into the signals very early. You need to be conscious of the fact that the world will look different 5 years down the line. So you need to crystal gaze. You need to be conscious of the fact that your people are your biggest assets, and hence they also should be following the same principles. I think as long as you follow those principles, it is very possible today to build a resilient organization which, irrespective of what is happening around, manages to continue to do well. Yeah, so those are my two thoughts around it, and maybe I can talk more about it, but as the questions progress.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Shivam, for kicking that off. And great points. Thanks for making that. And maybe let me bring it across to Sanjeev also. Sanjeev, if you would like to add onto the same, saying this situation which we are evolving today, where there's a balance required due to the volatility which is coming in. But there's a speed also required, agility also required. So how do you bring that balance in?
Yeah, that's really something that all CEOs worry about. CEO salary is directly proportional to anticipation. So, in simple terms, yeah. So I think Shivam mentioned a very important point of resourcing. It's 80% resourcing going to regular things and 20% going. I would say hierarchy-wise, we should also create a pyramid where by the time it reaches the CEO, 95% of his time is spent on what is the future. And the benefit that does is that there is stability at most of the levels until just below the senior management level. There is stability because they are focused on what is happening today. But agility, speed, all this has to come through thinking in terms of what could be the alternate strategies that you can have. And let me give a simple one example to tell you how in today's world so many things can change. And how a CEO has to anticipate and say, okay, if I need stability and also speed, what should we do? So we make fertility hormones. They're very complex proteins. Now, most of the past world, we used to extract it from urine. And there are different urines. There's a pregnant woman urine, there is a menopause urine, and there is a man urine. So they all three get used in those proteins. Now, those come from China, because urine in that size and collecting those proteins, only one country can manage it in such a nice way. What is the alternative? Now, this is very, very dangerous. That if supply chain breaks down, you're done. And there are so many patients of IVF all over the world which are now dependent on you, on cycles. What we did was actually tried to convert all of them into recombinants. So now there is a small room at 196 degrees where there is a cell line which is kept, and that small room is the raw material. So I'm saying that when you start thinking about resilience, when you start thinking about how to manage speed, how to manage let's say, a stability by which you know it is very predictable, then you need to understand what changes do you need to bring in your organization, whether they're technological, whether there is inventorization. You know, this famous thing that we started during COVID that just in time is gone, just in case has come in, all kinds of words we came up with. But we need to understand that alternate supply chain strategies are also equally important. There is also the factor that employees need to be constant. How do you manage attrition? Because that is also a sense of stability. So there are different aspects to stability, and I think we need to understand that we need to tackle each one of them at a time where volatility is not going away. We are done with, a stable world order of post-World War II. It's over and done with. We have a very unstable world order, and is going to remain so.
Okay, the world is going to be remaining unstable in the foreseeable future. I picked that, Sanjeev, and I think you said that CEO's compensation is directly linked to dealing with the uncertainty. So thanks for making those points. As we were getting some momentum in the panel, I realized one is, while we represent diverse industry sector, we don't represent diversity on the stage today. So that's obviously a thing which we're missing Ranjita, who was supposed to be here but not here today with us. But the other common factor was it's all A's and S's on the panel today, right? So it's the turns of the A's now to talk. And let me bring in how beautifully, Sanjeev, you talked on supply chain. And Ankur, if I could pull you in, supply chain has become... And if you look across, World Economic Forum presents a perspective of CEOs globally. What do they think is going to be the biggest risk for them? And post-pandemic, as was very correctly highlighted, supply chain came out to be the biggest risk across the world. And it has continued to be amongst the top 3 variable factors which CEOs have to look out for. Ankur, given you represent very deep manufacturing and deal upon not just in India but globally as well, your perspectives on how CEOs and organizations should be looking upon this factor and work through on supply chain, whether the stability or what we heard just from Sanjeev saying what alternate strategies should be built upon. Your thoughts?
First of all, thank you for having me here. So, as Mr. Sanjeev mentioned, I think he rightly said that the supply chain is completely disrupted. There is no momentum, there is no continuity as of now in the current world order. And as per my experience, helming the organization for now almost 2 decades, we have been importing our raw materials from various countries, right? So some of the largest conglomerates on the globe, which are $20 billion, $100 billion enterprises. And pre-COVID, it was pretty sustained, pretty calm. Everything was going very well. But post-COVID, something or the other happened, and some disruption or the other on the Red Sea or on the other fronts happened, and it completely disrupted our supply chain as well, specifically for imports. And there was no queue at all. As I said, nobody was prepared for that kind of a system to happen, because the shipping costs went haywire, and we were also in a quagmire as to what to do, how to go about our business. But then eventually what happens is, generally once you keep going and keep in the momentum, keep going, you have no other way but to dive through in, right? So we found our path. We found another vendor from the Middle East. Then we started importing from that vendor, right? That is something which we never envisaged or imagined before COVID, before the pandemic. So that is something which, and I'm sure the supply chain management is being looked after by everyone, every industry, every CEO, every management person in a very, very serious manner after pandemic. The supply chain shocks are to such an extent that right now we are exporting to US, we are exporting to Brazilian markets and all those markets. And initially, which used to take, say, 40 days or 45 days of supply to that part of the globe, now it is taking almost 70 days, 80 days of the transit period, right? So definitely it has hampered. But I'm sure, like just last to last week, we were in US in an exhibition for HVAC, which predominantly we cater to. Our pipes cater to the HVAC industry. And we are currently doing a project in supply as well. So that's like entire. So during that part, I could see that people from that part of the world, from basically US, they were also quite in a sense of dilemma as to how is it going to happen? How do you expect us to speed up the supply chain part? But then eventually what happens is you have to deal with it. There is no other way out. You can't just ignore it, right? So it's, as I said, you have to just navigate through it and maneuver through it. There is, nothing is certain in this world.
Yeah, I think great points. Again, reflecting on what Sanjeev started, and Ankur, you're bringing thoughts, saying that this is something which we were not expecting. The industry and the world largely came across the root shock, and pandemic, in a way, it had its own silver linings, and maybe this was a silver lining for preparing ourselves for the future. While at that point of time, it was a nightmare. But to deal with it and prepare for it is something which is extremely important. So thank you, Ankur, for making those points. Let me bring Atul now. It's very unique for Atul to call another Atul, but I'll make that attempt. We heard so much about uncertainty. Yesterday, I was also listening to Honorable Minister Shri Piyush Goyal ji. He talked upon the future of the country, and he talked on the 3 T's. And I was trying to bring those 3 T's in my own perspective, saying for India to grow big, organizations to grow big, how are these 3 T's going to play a role, which is talent or a trust, or also bringing in technology? What's your perspective?
So thank you, Atul. I think when Atul asks Atul, it is Atul Square. So I think I would have a slightly different perspective on that because both technology and talent, they are multipliers in themselves on intelligence and scale. But I think when you design either talent or technology, the configurations have to build in the DNA of trust. I think trust is neither an outcome nor it's an input, but I think it has to be weaved in a way that will make both the talent part of it as well as the technology part of it highly trustable, highly reliable. I do remember there was a conversation with one of the software AI companies, and when they were trying to pitch the product to us, they said, well, you know what, you put this on the child's student's laptop or iPad, and literally you can see everything what is going on. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, whatever they type, whatever their key searches are, we track everything. Now, that's obviously, to me, it was a big red flag as far as trust was concerned, but that is not what the product was supposed to do. But anyway, I think I would say both technology is required. The scale cannot be achieved without technology, and good technology, value-driven technology. And the second is the talent which drives the intelligence, which drives the intellectual ability to be able to respond to various changes, geopolitical issues. And with that combination, with the trust being part of their DNA, I think then you have a good solution. And then the 3 T's will really give you great value for your customers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I again picked up, and I talk quite a lot on this as well, where trust has become an economical currency we don't even realize, and you beautifully summed it, how trust needs to build upon. Shivam, if I could bring you in on a very similar thought process of saying that how the talent shift is happening, and obviously you represent an industry where trust is really paramount. So your perspectives on looking at the 3 T's.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, trust is table stakes. And internally, when we talk about growth, we say your growth has to be competitive, your growth has to be sustainable, so it has to sustain through the years. But very, very importantly, it has to be a responsible growth. So what I mean by responsible growth is we tell our people, and we have 24 brands in the ecosystem that we run, we say that if you cannot give any of the products that we sell, there are 550 odd SKUs that we sell. If you cannot give any of these products to your family members and you cannot consume it yourself, don't sell it. So that's the clean, very simple test, right? And at times we intellectualize and we say, there is a section of people who might still seek it, I don't want it, etc. We say every single product that we sell, you should be comfortable giving it to your family members. Yeah, that's responsible growth very clearly in terms of trust for us. Technology is very critical, and in fact, linked to the first question you asked, and I was just reflecting on it as this conversation was happening. Very critical parameter today for ensuring success in the future is technology. And I'll tell you why and how I think about it. We have this concept of, if you have to ensure that you're growing sustainably, you have to fire bullets and then you have to fire cannonballs. And let me try and explain that. Always fire bullets first and then you fire cannonballs. What I mean to say here is, as I said, 20-30% of the organization is always focused on the future. Now, what is this set of people doing? They are trying to figure out what are the other incremental things we can get into. Yeah, and when you're looking at incremental things you can get into, these are essentially bullets that you're firing at newer opportunities, right? Don't bet your bank behind a certain point of view. First, go test it out. So you first fire a bullet, test out the thesis. If the thesis works, you fire a big cannonball. So you then fire a big part of your ecosystem into that opportunity. The probability of success is, close to 100%. Technology plays a very critical role here because without technology, you actually cannot fire bullets smartly. Yeah, technology allows you to first be clear on what you're expecting. It allows you to measure very, very cleanly. It allows you to get very quick feedback so you can perfect your direction. And technology allows hence for you to prove that this bullet is a success. And that successful bullet then translates to a big cannonball being fired. So for us, as we look at it, technology is table stakes, right? It essentially is what drives an organization. And this discussion used to happen 10 years back as well. Is technology critical? And I think at that time we could still separate it out. But today this is what drives any organization. So I would say all the three are very critical. You need people to ensure that the system moves. So you need talent which understand and thinks like that. You need technology, which is the base layer of what you do. And of course, trust is essential. Without trust, there is no tomorrow. You can build a today without trust, but there is no tomorrow without trust.
Wonderfully summed up. Thank you so much, Shivam, for that. Sanjeev, if I bring you in on the shift of the talent which is happening, and specifically when Indian enterprises are also trying to be more global, and with some of the trade deals which are happening at this point of time, the way the opportunity is opening for country India, how much is talent going to play a role, and how should the executives be looking at it?
Yeah, as the world is opening up, it's about, I think, thrill and chills also. Yeah, because I'll tell you how adaptable talent has to be from an example that we saw. Everybody talks about pandemic, but let me tell you something post-pandemic that happened. Yeah, we started getting a lot of big orders from Russia, and we opened an office in Ukraine. Russia attacked Ukraine. We started working on Myanmar. Well, Janta created trouble. We started getting big tenders in Sri Lanka. The currency devalued substantially. Last year, we started getting big orders from Iran, and now you know what's happening. So I'm starting to feel that Dr. Jaishankar is going to give me a hotline now, saying that tell us, predict where the next problem is going to be. But, the context of saying all this is as follows, that you have a certain pool of talent that you have. Talent, when you define talent, you know that people have to be trustworthy, agile, thinking, action-oriented, everything that you talk about in talent, everything that people have. So, just because situations change, don't change talent. That is the most important thing, because you need to believe and trust your talent. And as you believe in them, you have to make them more adaptable to situations that change. And you have to move people across the organization to make them more agile to different things. And I have seen that very bright people who join us at an early stage, in the first 3 to 5 years, we move them everywhere. We give them a very difficult supply chain project. We give them a very difficult marketing problem. We give them some very interesting project management work when big change is happening in some area. And we test them out to see how they come out of it. And as we see that, those are the people who flower substantially later on. Yeah, I can now say this, that about 6 big pharma MNC CEOs in India worked with me for 10 to 15 years. Yeah, and I take a lot of pride in that compared to all my career, spent on whatever things. Yeah, so talent you have to spot early. talent you have to nurture carefully and make them more agile. Talent also has to be nurtured to be with you. So it's never rational all the time. It has to be emotional also at the time, and at the same time. That is where the difference is.
Amazing, amazing. No, great points. Thank you so much for making those. Nurturing talent. And in these times of turbulence where you need to have that trust and confidence in your talents so that they can adapt to the situation, I think those are two very, very important points. I know you wanted to make a point, please.
I just want to elaborate on the technology and the trust element. Obviously, technology to a layman or to a generic CEO could be that I have some technology in the organization, and that's good enough. I think we are talking about technology that makes every employee's life easy, and technology that creates a customer delight. That is a different type of technology than putting oracles and SAPs in the organization. The second aspect is on the trust, and there's some very outside-in perspectives I'll share with you here. We have businesses in Middle East, and we often intermingle with the authorities there. And generally, a conversation around Indians come out because there are a lot of Indians in the Middle East. You look at UAE, Oman, all the GCC countries. And one of the things that very senior leader from there told us, he said, you know what? For the last 50, 60 years, so many Indians have come into Middle East. They never do scams. They never do fraud. And they are the best employees you can get in the companies. I think that has created a community trust, a trust towards a particular community, that these guys are professionals, they mean their business, they have their own achievements to do, but they come and they value add into our companies. And last week, I had the privilege of being in Kuala Lumpur, where Prime Minister Modi addressed a community gathering, and we were part of the organization committee. And he made a very important point. He said, do you know why all these companies are racing to sign FTAs with us? Is because they trust India. They trust the people of India. They trust the businesses of India. And that is one of the key reasons why we see a lot of inbound FTAs coming in. And because we sit in Singapore, we have a very different view of how things are happening. We genuinely find countries, when we talk to their leaders, have a very different positive perception about India, no matter what media writes. They have belief in the people. They have belief in the education system of our country. For example, we have many schools in Japan. The biggest student base in Japan is Japanese students. They learn Sanskrit, they learn Hindi, they learn yoga, they learn everything about India. And their parents actually say, get my kid sit next to an Indian kid. That's the value of our education. So I think trust is something that really is in our favor. We in India need to realize that trust is a capital and a currency, that we need to use it in the proper way, and therefore that will help us in a big way to go towards our Viksit Bharat.
Yeah, the trust is underpinning for us to be Viksit Bharat in 2047 and the journey towards that. So thank you so much for making those points. Maybe let me bring in Ankur again. Ankur, we've heard a lot about make in India, but make for world. And you representing an organization which you just talked upon how you're working globally. What are those opportunities available, and how much innovation is going to play a very important role? We just heard upon the strategy around firing bullets and then cannons, but your perspectives around the same.
I think, as we heard many of the speakers yesterday, many of the eminent ministers and speakers yesterday, and all of them are having a view that this is not the time for globalization anymore, right? So, and in a sense, even we are seeing in industry everywhere that this is a very heightened time for deglobalization by many of the European countries as well as the US, right? Which is quite visible everywhere. And it's quite a thing which generally initially when we used to export maybe a decade ago or 15 years ago, it was like perceived well, and we were welcomed well over there. It's not like now we are not welcomed well, but even now at this point, the thing is that it's become quite difficult and challenging to go there and propagate your product and your industry. Although we are from India, as all of the speakers have said, that we have a trust factor with other countries, with other people, and we are known to be highly trustworthy in every business we venture into, and people generally tend to they respect us in that sense. But the fact of the matter right now is that globally the situation is not very good, not very conducive for going global. Although we are doing exports, I'm sure everybody here on the panel is doing good exports. I ventured into exports personally 10, 15 years ago. And the global exports right now are to an extent that you have to find certain sectors, certain countries, where it is still very much in the flavor, like in the thing that you can go like Brazilian market, like Latin American market, like European markets for that matter. The American market is not at all welcoming us at this moment, or any export oriented country. But India, as I said, India's time has come, as the Prime Minister also rightly said yesterday, and we are there. Nobody in the world can ignore us at this moment. So in manufacturing, we were not having that kind of efficiencies and proficiencies which China used to have. But I'm sure with the technology part, with the talent that is coming in from the other parts of the world, which used to drain out initially, is now coming back to the country. And I'm sure in coming 10 to 15 years, the vision of the Prime Minister is going to be fulfilled.
Thanks, Ankur, for making those comments. Yeah, the world is interestingly moving into a very unique situation where sovereignty is gaining a lot more importance, and the impact on the trade around that is going to be seen. While the FTAs are definitely a step in the right direction, I think trust is also going to play a massive role, what we heard from the panel members. What we haven't heard too much is, we heard talent, technology, trust, and many other dimensions, but we haven't heard the biggest thing which is coming up in the city next week, which is AI. Just want to go around and get the perspectives from the CEOs out over here on how do they look at AI and the future of AI. AI is something which is considered to be generational shift. It's going to be having a massive impact irrespective of the industry that you represent upon. Maybe Atul, I'll start with you to share your thoughts on how you are seeing AI to play out.
Yeah, thank you, Atul. I have a perspective because of my foundation in technology. AI is like what 2001 was, when you had a lot of these search engines coming into the markets. There were, I think, close to 150 plus search engines, and then just 4 or 5 survived. And everybody said, this is really the end game, a lot of information is already available. Why do you need professionals? Why do you need people? But that is information. A similar cycle is coming up now, which is with the AI, which you can say is about, my view is it's about 70-80% hyper amplified. And secondly, but it does actually have strengths. So what AI will do is the transformation that search engines did for the world. But search engines reduce the ability for people to do research because everything was at their fingertips. You don't have to go to library. You don't have to go to your friends. And therefore, it brought in a lot of introvert attitudes towards people saying, I have everything on my desktop. AI is actually going to impact, and particularly as we deal with young generations, is their thinking abilities. That is going to really impair their ability to think deeply. They will simply look at statistics, they look at the facts, and tell the AI, tell me what should be my decision. And I think that is what we are worried about. So we want to definitely expose children in a very careful manner and educate them about the negatives of AI and make sure that they don't fall. Social already has killed many of the persons and many of the children to becoming complete introverts. And AI will further make it decision-wise introverts. So we want to be very careful about it. Yeah.
Thanks for bringing those perspectives. Maybe let me bring in Shivam as well. Shivam, the positives of AI and how that's going to play out in the industry. Your thoughts?
Sure. Before that, on a slightly humorous note, I've personally seen some very interesting aspect of AI. So I walked into my cousin's room. He's fairly younger. He's in 10th standard, and I said, "What are you doing?" So he had a sheet in front of him, and he was cutting a few words and writing a few things. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "No, nothing. I'm humanizing ChatGPT outcome." So, and he said that this is a standard thing that many kids do in school, by the way, these days, where they get ChatGPT to give you perfect answers, and then then they humanize it a bit so that the teachers can't make out that this is actually a ChatGPT outcome. Yeah, so, AI, AI is, of course, doing things in its own way for everyone. But I think in terms of, first of all, I believe that AI has actually been around for a long, long time. This is Gen AI, which is actually the big shift. AI has been around, right? So when data does intelligent things, and at times better than you, for me, that's actually artificial intelligence that's been around for a long, long time. It has become way more trendier now. I think if you were to keep the outcome cleanly in mind and keep the raw material for that outcome in mind, and then you leverage AI to create the most efficient solution, that's the best way to leverage AI. And I'll tell you what, let me take a bit of a consumer angle. I'm a consumer person. I'm a FMCG marketer for last 20, 25 years. When you create a film today, right, there's something called as a brief that the agency and the client first agree on, and then the thinking starts. Now, a shallower way of leveraging AI is you actually ask AI itself to give you the brief, and then you ask AI to create content, and then you ask AI to create the final execution of the content and create a film. What you see as a result is a very patchy film which consumers will not connect emotionally to, versus human beings actually sit together, tap into emotions of their consumers, and then come up with a basic brief. Then pull in AI to create multiple ideas on how to map to that emotion and deliver a good film, and then actually do a shoot, physical shoot, and then put an AI on top of that shoot to create a nice, clean outcome. The outcome is very different. And we have seen that, right? When this started, we got our marketers to start to create multiple films very quickly, and the smartest ones were guys who could create 4 different executions very quickly. But somewhere we realized that when you deploy those kind of executions in the market, consumer pick is not good. People don't like that content. But when you actually humanize AI in the right way, the outcome is brilliant. So I believe that within the organization, one has to be very conscious of saying that, am I actually also shortchanging and short-fusing the critical elements of how to create a great outcome? And if you're not doing that, then AI comes to your rescue for sure. It comes to your rescue in marketing. It comes to your rescue in sales. Great way to map out. So today when our sales rep goes to sell in the market, he's actually at an outlet level able to figure out what is it that this outlet needs even before starting the conversation. That's AI for you, right? And then he goes and makes the call and makes the sale. And you see that almost 20 to 30% productivity improvement happens every time you leverage tools like that. So I would say it's not something that will completely change any organization. It's a fantastic tool now available where you keep the principles intact and leverage that tool to create brilliant outcomes. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Humanizing the AI, or will AI be humanized by the tech providers? Maybe that's the theme which you talked upon. And very brilliantly, you brought in perspectives from your experience and reflections of how the adaptability is coming through at this moment. Maybe let me pull in Sanjeev on this topic again, but slightly making it more broader, saying one big opportunity which is there and one big risk that we are dealing upon at this point of time.
Yeah, let me put the opportunity in a different way, that CEO's role from being a chief problem solver is changing to chief context officer. Now the CEO has to provide a context to everything because many problems are the technology is trying to solve for. Yeah, and I'll give you an example that if you're a cell culture happening, and it has 50 parameters, there is temperature, humidity, there is so and so many things to have to pH, so many things have to be managed. Earlier, machines used to give you readings and you had to intervene. Yeah. Now, probably with AI, we are seeing that we are able to write programs by which this is able automatically gets corrected and it's solved for. So you're creating safer products, you're creating more predictability. So all that is getting solved for. What is it raising as problems? So there is a tremendous opportunity even in R&D where selection of molecules used to take months and months of work. Selection of mini pools, from the recombinants that you had to make. Months and months you used to spend over it. Today, in a 1 week's time, we can get it done. So there is so much opportunity to speed up a lot of things. But I think the risk factor that you mentioned, I want to mention 2 risks that are important for us to understand. As I mentioned, that machines are solving the problem and correcting things on its own. What is the power to write that we have to give to machines? We are in an industry where any small thing going wrong can cost human life. We just cannot allow machines to take over. We will have to ensure that there is intervention at the right time and what is allowed to be written by machines and what is controlled by human beings. It is just impossible to, let's say, allow machines to do everything. So I think this is very, very important, at least in our industry. In healthcare, it is extremely important. The second is what message healthcare industry sends to all the AI companies. And that's a very important risk, and that's something that healthcare industry should teach AI companies. 30 years ago, or roughly 27 years ago, healthcare cloned a sheep. We all know about it, Dolly, the sheep that was cloned. That science is far more advanced than AI of today. AI can't reach that level. Now that happened. But healthcare and the healthcare thinkers were so thoughtful about this that they allowed it to stop there. Nothing much happened after that. And they said, this is dangerous, can't go here, everybody has to stop. And world over, everybody stopped. So that thinking ability to understand what can go wrong, healthcare industry saw it, did it, and ensured things don't go wrong. My worry with AI today is that AI industry doesn't show the same maturity of healthcare industry. They're going everywhere and doing everything. I'm not sure that they understand the cost of opportunity or the money that they make cannot be at the cost of certain things ethically. And the ethical risk of AI is huge. It's unbelievable the amount of ethical risk that AI brings on the table. And please, all the AI companies, I say, learn from healthcare. Learn where to stop. And that's probably the risk I wanted to highlight more.
Thank you for sharing that thought. We started from humanizing to ethics. We're working towards progressively more on saying what are those guardrails which are required for AI and where AI should not trespass. I think you brought in beautifully. I know we almost towards the end of the panel, but I just want to quickly go around and just close out on this question and maybe start with Ankur. Ankur, not just from an AI perspective, but where do you see one big opportunity? And you talked upon we did not see supply chain as a big risk till pre-pandemic. Are there such similar blindsightedness which we have? What could be around the corner which we need to be aware of?
See, with AI, with the advent of AI and whatever it has done in the last 3-4 years, I'm sure there are many more shocks to come in the coming few years. At least in my industry, it's privy to my industry that at least the jobs of the plumbers, masons, architects, all those kind of jobs are not going to be taken over by AI. So if I talk about personally, we are in that sense, we have to deal with humans more even today and maybe in coming times as well. But obviously, it's going to be beneficial in creating designs. It's going to be beneficial in creating so many systems which earlier a lot of people used to do. So in that sense, obviously, it has a very constructive role. See, technology has got both pros and cons, and it is going to be disruptive as well as constructive. Now it is up to us, how do we take it forward?
Thanks. Maybe just last round around to say any risk which maybe whatever we see which hasn't been rightfully prioritized or focused at this point of time. Anyone in the panel who wants to take that?
I think you earlier asked about innovation also, right? I think innovation The risk is that you think innovation once in a year and you think you've done this, right? I think the innovation today has to be really 24/7. It has to be listening to your customers. It has to have all the values. And organizations that do it on a sporadic basis versus those who would do it on a regular, dynamic basis, I think that's the biggest risk that we have.
So innovation being mainstream. Thank you. Sorry.
I'd say black swan events were 3-4 in a century. Please understand that this is going to be far more often. And though live in a very unsettled world and learn to live there.
I think this is a time where disruptions will happen, and then the disruptors will get disrupted. And as Sanjeev said, I think the biggest risk is for any organization not to be prepared for what's coming. I think everyone has had enough practice over the last 5 to 10 years on these events. I think they'll of course become way more frequent. So the biggest risk for any organization is to not be prepared for such a tumultuous future. And one of the critical preparedness parameter for me is being able to pick up the signals early. So being able to, as an organization, whatever field you are in, being able to see ahead of the time. And one of the critical elements of that is the last mile, which is really connected to what's happening outside, being able to and being allowed to bring those signals in within the organization. So I think that, for me, I still see as a big risk for many very large organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well said. Thank you. I think that was saying, how do you bring outside in view perspective more rather than just getting lost in the details of what you do? Wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time today morning and talking so nicely about how the vision is unfolding out in 2026, defining the leadership, innovation, and growth in the world which is constantly transforming. On that note, thank you, Shivam. Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, Ankur. And thanks, Atul, for coming in and sharing your thoughts today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much to our moderator for conducting the session so well. And thank you so much to all our speakers for sharing so valuable perspectives. Thank you. Let's give it a big round of applause to all our speakers and our moderator.